Previously on Tales from Tech Titans.
I was going through high school going, what am I going to do? I'll be an engineer, do this, do that. I'm a great believer in life is as long as you can't have regrets, otherwise you go nuts. Someone said to me early in my career, which was quite interesting and I hold to now, you can have someone that works in a big organisation for 20 years and they will know less or done less than someone that's worked in a small organisation for a couple of years.
Absolutely. And I think that's, again, about finding your own groove.
Yeah.
Because some people really thrive in big organisations and they enjoy the structure
that's right.
and the opportunity. But other people, that's just a nightmare. It's too political.
And it's really about where you put yourself out there and what are the different bits and pieces you do. So whether I've worked in a big brand or a small brand or whatever, big organisation, small organisation, I've always going, well, what's the things I can do that I can go, well, what are 3 or 4 things I can do? And as someone put it to me recently, said, what are you known for? And that you put it into that perspective, from a career perspective, it's a different conversation. It's a hard conversation to have with yourself mentally to go, what am I known for? What is it that makes me? And I've never been a real big person for different reasons, probably my own shyness or whatever, but around what's my brand? I've got to have a brand and all this sort of stuff. I've never been one to try and say, okay, so what is my brand and that sort of thing.
But brand is it can be interpreted in many ways. I think people hear personal brand these days, and again, they think of LinkedIn and social media and so forth. But I'm a big believer in your personal brand is what people say about you in your workplace when you're not there.
Totally agree with that.
And what you stand for, and that's how you build your reputation. There's another quote. There's a book of quotes I love, but one of the quotes is, it's not who you know or what you know, it's who knows you.
Yes.
And what you're known for, to your point. And if you get known as someone that comes in, that delivers, is reliable, got integrity, it's a pretty good starting point for a career.
Yeah, it is.
And I think the rest of it is going to be kind of flavours around personality and so forth. But there's some kind of core fundamentals.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good building block. And if you can get into a big organisation that's growing in a big place, your career is going to kind of naturally ascend with it.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, you're drawing back on your recruitment experience, is interviewing people or being interviewed. You've got those little segments. That's really hard to gauge whether that person is right for that role or not. So that's really that other part of reputation that really comes into it. And I forgot where I was going to go with that one now. Oh,
that's okay. Look, I think in the context you just described, it's very easy to get put too much emphasis on someone's achievements. Which may sound a bit strange, but the research shows that achievements are contextual.
Yes.
And you can have somebody that delivers. In fact, they had a research on US stockbrokers in Wall Street, and they found a top performer moves firm on their own. It takes 5 years to get their performance back to the same level. They move with the team. They don't miss a beat. And there's a big bit there again, team, context, environment, knowing each other's strengths, weaknesses, and being able to collaborate. And that individual may look like the standout performer, but there's probably a whole mechanism kind of behind it. And that's the skill of interviewing, is when someone rocks up and they can talk about this project and this project and this deliverable. Well, hang on, what context and what was going on? What conditions were true?
And it's sort of, if you're really right in the trenches, you got your sleeves rolled up and you're really getting there, making decisions and having to push an organisation forward, it's hard to explain to people that every single day you're getting smashed. Or, no one actually hears that you're sitting there, kicking back and, looking out the window.
That's right.
They don't know. And that living those experiences, it's a hard one for coming back to your role analogy about walking in and that selling yourself in interviews and things like that is difficult in one sense, and it's also difficult for the person who's sitting on the other side. If there was a right way, if I had a right way to do it or not, I think I'd make a fortune, but I don't have the answer for that.
I think it's an age-old problem, and I don't think it's anyone's always got the solution to it. It's time, it's experience, it's structure as well. because I think the more people interview, the more they tend to think they make a decision on gut.
Yeah.
And that's when things start to go really wrong.
Yeah.
Hey, after you left BAT, it was just after about 5 years, I saw in your resume a sabbatical.
Yes.
And I'm really interested in sabbaticals because I think they're one of those things that if you set them up for success, you know what you want from it, they can be really powerful, really re-energizing, and kind of set you up for the next phase in your career. How did you set that period in your life up for success?
Yeah, so what it was coming back to Australia really was how it came about.
Yeah.
So it was spending time with the family and those sort of things. And Australia is the only country in the world that actually has long service leave.
Yeah.
I've never had it here, never had it overseas, break. So I thought, well, a bit of time to do it. So, went on a couple of holidays, went on a camper van trip around the UK. My kids will tell you that they'll never go in a camper van again. But it was good time to reconnect and recharge. And I think it was quite interesting. For the first couple of weeks, I was sitting there and going, I could swear my phone was ringing and all this sort of stuff. And it took me a while to get out of that work mode. When we talk about going on holidays and recharging, but it was the first time that I got really proper recharged and energized over a period of time. And I highly recommend that anyone through their career at particular times should just take the time and take that 6 months. And it was a hard one because we came back for particular reasons, family orientation mainly.
Yeah.
But then I was getting approached for different roles, UK, New York, and all this stuff. And I'm going, are we making the right decision here? But we came back. That 6 months was fantastic. It was, I think, being a busy, career-orientated person, particularly when the kids were young, you miss out on a lot of things. And now going forward, my mantra is families first when people are working for me, and get that work-life balance first, because the only people that are going to turn up for you, a few workmates that you've made friends with over the years might turn up to your funeral, but it's really your family that's going to turn up there. And if that's not right, you're not going to, your head's not going to be in the game at work.
Yeah.
So, and you're not going to enjoy yourself and everything. So for me, that really taught me around, you've got to have a good work-life balance, and you work hard at certain times, and at certain times, the organisation paybacks is, okay, well, you got things that you need to do for your family, or you're going through a tough time at home with your family, take care of it. And that's the balance that people have got to strike.
Yeah, it's interesting. A company I was with previously in the UK, the partners were always invited to the Christmas party, and there was always a kids' Christmas party.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons the founder was, there's probably a multitude of reasons, but one of them was, it's the families that basically enable these people to come to the business and do their job. Yeah. So it shouldn't just be a Christmas party to thank the staff for their contribution for the year. It should be the holistic person that turned up, and we sort of celebrate and thank those people too.
Yeah, and it's a very astute person that did that.
Yeah, and and it wasn't contrived. I think it just came from his personal values, right?
Yeah.
And I always felt I learned a lot from that experience and his values and of how to run a business in a very human way.
Yes.
So when you returned to Australia, you joined Deloitte for a short.
PwC.
Oh, sorry, I got that wrong. PwC, there you go. So what enticed you back to consulting?
Well, I got recommended from some contacts in there, and I thought I'll give it a go. Learn a bit more of the business side, a bit more different sector side.
Yeah.
There was also a thought process was, okay, well, if it's good, I'll hang around. And I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it; I loved it.
Yeah.
But it also gives me a chance to be able to see what the Australian market's like and see what comes up, which is where, the partner I worked in there, Pete Milan, great guy, one of those guys that wears his heart on the sleeve and does the right thing by or tries to do the right thing by everyone, which is a great characteristic. And then had a opportunity to move into at AGL, which is another fantastic time. And Pete and I still talk today, and good friends, I'd say, as well as a work relationship. And that just sort of really gave me a chance to get back into how much Australia had changed, how much everything. And I remember sitting in the PwC office looking out the window, and I counted up there's more skyscrapers than when I'd been there, and all the number of brands that have changed from different buildings to another different building or didn't exist anymore. Yeah. So it was a huge change in the business environment and business landscape that happened. So I'm glad that I did it and got a chance to actually share my experiences of what I'd done from a global perspective back into the customers that we had.
It's good to take that breather and also get the lay of the land and kind of figure out what's what. Because you say you 10 years is a long time to be away from somewhere.
Yeah.
I think I've been in Australia 8 years, and I think if I went back to the UK now, from a work perspective, it would be very different, and things would have definitely moved on. And it's hard to, as you say, people didn't really know who British American Tobacco were here and IAG were over there. You just to kind of assume because you're around it that people know these things. So from there, you then joined AGL, where you spent 5 years, went in security all the way through to CTO, interim CTO, and into CIO.
Yep.
So again, another great example. Join a big company in a big place that's kind of going places, and career opportunities kind of create themselves. How much of that was again by design, and how much were you kind of looking for those things?
Probably a bit of actually both. So the AGL experience came about where again they and this was at a time when the only people that had the size A type sort of positions was the banks, the major organisations. And I got approached and said, look, we've got this role. Someone within AGL that I worked with before had put my name forward. So I went through the process and I remember working out, talking to all the different people, right? And I remember sitting with Brett Redmond, who was the CFO at that time, and he went on to CEO and now it's CEO at Transgrid. And I said, he goes, "Have got any questions?" I said, "Yeah, I got one." I said, "What do you actually want?" It's the first time I thought I'm going to ask the question, and I'd never been that forthright in an interview before. And I said, "Well, this person's telling me you want this person wants this, and they're all totally different things. What do you actually want?" So I gave him the pick list and he said, "I want that," which was business engagement, someone who understands the technology that can really make a difference. I went, okay, fine, that sounds like that's what I want to do. Landed, he was my executive sponsor in there, so I was quite lucky. And then at the same time, I started with another guy who, the second person that probably had a big influence on my career, Simon Moorfield, who's the CIO at Transurban. And again, had the same traits as what I was saying about with Larry, where wanted you to do different things, wanted you to do more things, wanted you to grow, would back you with it. We didn't always see eye to eye, but I would class him as a really good friend now, as in Simon. So we had really good respect for each other. And I remember sitting down, gone through, here's the cyber strategy, sat with the board. The board said, this is exactly what we want. John Stanhope, who was the head of the audit committee, he was the chair at Telstra and Ozpost, and he's over the Chancellor at Deakin. He goes, "Oh, this is what I was been looking for. This is awesome. This is what we got to do." And so I'm going, okay, well, this is really a good start. I like this. So off we went, did the started the process. I was hire number 3 for security. So built out a capability, had a lot of support from the exec team and the board, and built it out. And then I remember about a year in, Simon goes, "Oh, look, you could be, what do you want to do with your career?" And I was like, okay. I don't get asked that question that often. And he goes, because you could be, we'll tee you up so you could be a size at a really big one of the banks or whatever. And I go, you know what, I'd like to be a CIO. And the reasons for it, doing CIO, I love the security roles. It's and what's transferable from a security role to a CTO, CIO role is that what you're facing every day is totally different. And you're not just sitting there doing one thing done. And I said, I'd like to do a bit more business side. I reckon I've got the that understanding or that opportunity to grow. And he went, okay, we'll see how that goes. And I didn't think much of it. And I remember 6 months later, we had this, he did a reorg, and he rings me up and he goes, and I was going on holidays. So I left the front door of the office. I was off catching up with someone, and he rings me and said, oh, where are you? And I went, oh, I just round the corner. He goes, have you left for the day? I said, oh, pretty much. He goes, I said, do you want me to come back? And he goes, yeah, just come back. Okay, so I come back and I meet him. He goes, look, this is what I want to do. What's your first reaction? I just said to him, I said, what am I going to stuff up? And he went, and he laughed. And I said, but that's my first thing. Well, I said, I'll be honest with you, is what you're giving me this great opportunity. What can I really stuff up? And he goes, don't worry, we'll sort that out later. And it's like, okay, fantastic. And then it started going from there and got given more accountabilities, more responsibilities. But my number one thing in my mind was, what's the basics I have in my tool set?
Yeah.
How can I leverage the people around me? And I have this great belief is, as a leader, you got to get the batting order right of your team. Everyone plays a role. Everyone has a strength. All you're doing is you're steering the ship. And at any one time, one of those other people that work for you, doesn't matter how junior, how senior, can take control of the situation, and you then become a tool for that person to be able to leverage. And I said a number of times to my staff, what do you want me to do? Tell me what you need for me to do, and I'll just do it. Just tell me what it is. And then, through the coaching and everything, as they get to know me, they go, oh, look, can you go talk to what's the name to get them off my back or whatever, and off we go. So I just relied on that piece to get the best people I could get in, to fill the roles and be able to have the opportunity to grow. And I remember Simon coming to me a little bit after that, and I got my leadership team, and he goes to me, I think I've worked you out. And I'm thinking in my mind, I haven't worked myself out, so how have you worked me out? And he goes, you just focus in and hire the best people, fantastic people. And I went, isn't that what you're meant to do? So I've always had this thing is, one of my blind sides, get those skills in, but also I want people who can be better than me, or I think it can be better than me, to work for me.
So that's interesting. So when you're hiring, what do you look for in people?
I look for what their belief structure is, what you can get out of that interview. So how do you how do you feel about doing the right thing? And I think I like people who are going to do the best for the organisation, and the self-interest is not there. And it's a hard thing, and it's also a hard thing to sell when you're passionate about something, a particular thing, which other people might not appreciate that passion. So it's the willingness to look broader, the willingness to put themselves out there, the willingness to sort of, you get that feel. It's hard through an interview, but that sort of feeling to be able to challenge me as a leader is important. Like I said, I don't know everything, but the best teams I've had, and I remember one that really sticks in my mind, we'd all go around the table and we'd all talk about what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, and we'd get agreement, and this one person would go, but what about? And it was like everyone would stop and we'd look at the team, look at him, and he'd explain the position, and invariably we'd end up with a stronger outcome than what we previously had. But if I didn't have those people in the team that could challenge, groupthink is a dangerous thing.
Yep.
But you've got to have that person that does it right and thinks slightly differently. And I'd have another person in my team, for example, he'd always go, but there's a third way. First few times it drove me nuts, but then I go, okay, well, this is great. But and I think the willingness to learn, if it can come across in an interview, I don't sit there and go, I'm after 10 things, I've got to tick all those 10 things, because you're not going to find that. Okay, so how many of those can I get, and how many am I confident that person could achieve or grow into those 10 things.
It's refreshing to hear because my experience of almost 25 years of recruitment is a lot of hiring managers fall into the trap. It's probably what Simon was talking about.
Yep.
Is they hire against the job description.
Yeah.
And I often think, first and foremost, by the way, the perfect hire is the job description minus N.
Yeah.
Because no one's going to be the full thing. Otherwise, A, they're going to want too much money.
Yep.
B, they're going to be bored in that job within 3 months because they can do everything. But what you're really focusing on there is what I talked about earlier, which is performance is ultimately because of the right culture fit.
Yeah.
And no one's ever going to be, and they shouldn't be. You're never going to get everyone that's going to be the same identical culture fit, but there has to be some commonality.
Yeah.
And I like what you're saying there about the belief system. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. It's an interesting. You just got me to reflect on something. It's taken me a lot of years to realise this, and I'm, I probably and when we're talking about in the previous parts, touched on it in relation to that human aspect, but it's only until probably in the last few years I've really realised that my favourite or the organisations I want to work for, the people I want to work for, it revolves more around the team, the culture, and the camaraderie, and doing interesting stuff than I want to work for that brand doing X.
Yep.
And I think that's taken me a long, long time to realise that, and that's probably in those situations, that's where I work and perform the best.
Yeah.
Because I just enjoy coming to work, and that makes a huge difference.
Have there been any roles, I'm sort of jumping ahead to some of my broader questions in some ways, but any roles you've kind of gone in and you thought, this isn't me?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I
won't ask you to name ones, but...
No, I'm not going to name them, but yes.
Did you act upon it?
One nearly, mental health-wise was bad.
Yeah.
And then others, I've acted on it to make sure that I didn't get into that state again.
Yeah. Because I think, look, it's something I always try and encourage people when they decide to come to the job market.
Yep.
Before you sort of rush and you start going on Seek and looking at salaries and opportunities and start kind of dreaming of how you're going to spend all that extra salary, is what do you really want? What work environment do you want? What's going to work for you? What kind of team? What kind of purpose of organisation? And it sounds like you've arrived at that point now, but I think that's where a job search should start.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've been asked that earlier in the career, and I couldn't answer that question. And it's taken me a long time to learn that. Wish I'd known it earlier, and that's the advice I'm giving people I talk to. A better team and that sort of stuff. And coming back to my reflection, I remember sitting in, IAG days, but AGL days. I can remember sitting there in a town hall, and we're kicking off transformation, and senior leadership team are up there at the front, and they go through what is it that you want to achieve out of this, and people would go, I want to achieve this migration, I do that, and I just went, I want us in 10 years' time to all be down the pub and reflect on this period as being a great time of our environment, of our careers.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, and people have remembered that, and that's where, to me, that makes the joy, because everyone will do the work, because if it's fun engagement coming to work, they do it and the environment's right, and that's what I've reflected on for me is so important.
You're preaching to the choir. I'm sure Hayley will attest to this, but something I talk to the team about a lot is that's my purpose for coming to work is and working with the team is I want them to look back at this period in their career and say, God, we kicked some goals and we had a great time and we achieved so much, and whatever people go on and do beyond this doesn't really matter, but it's knowing that we've come together with real intention for a short period of time, whatever that can look like. It's interesting. Thanks for sharing, because I think that is the insightful stuff, right? I think the lessons that you've learned.
And the other part, coming back to your question around have you made roles that you're going into, we all make bad career choices.
Yeah.
Everyone does. All right. So if you have made a bad career choice, you're not the first person.
Yeah. It might be the last.
And you won't be the last. And I've actually, I've had to move people on knowing that the role, it's not they're not capable. It's not that they're a bad person or anything like that. They're a good person. It's just that it's obviously it's not the right role.
Yeah.
And they haven't, it's just they've made a bad career choice. We've all made them.
Yeah. It's interesting. My oldest son is kind of in moving into the world of work, I suppose. And he worked for a big insurance company and kind of thrived, but maybe found it a bit too restrictive. He then went and joined a scale-up.
Okay.
And he phoned me after a couple of weeks and he said, I hate it. Like, I feel like I'm failing. I don't know what people want from me. I don't understand expectations. And I'm just not in my comfort zone. I'm not enjoying coming to work. And I said, well, it's been a couple of weeks. Give it a few more weeks. New job. A few more weeks. He's like, I'm just not. This isn't me. And I said, well, great. You've learned pretty quick in your career that you need to be in a structured environment with process, with proper leadership that's going to guide you and help you. And maybe in a few years that won't be the case, but in this moment in your career, that's what you need. And he had the courage to resign. He's found another job that's somewhere in between the two. And he's loving life again.
It's a very mature outlook and a very great learning, like you're saying, at that early stage in the career. And I think, what you're saying sort of also, I think about change, and the line goes, humans hate change. We change constantly all the time. And I think when we talk about it from a work perspective, I think the issue is feeling that you're not in control in some way of that change is the issue. And coming back to probably your son's perspective, is probably there was a whole bunch of stuff going around him that he just had no clue and no way to understand the why and also control it in some sort of way. I've been in those situations. And I'm sure people who work for me have been in those situations as well. But it's really, how do you make people feel empowered that they have some form of ownership around the change that's happening? And it's a hard thing to do as a leader. It's a hard thing to accept as an employee.
What's interesting is one of my pet observations, if you like, of the world of transformation is that people are resistant to change by and large, or don't like change. Yet we then call someone the change manager and we send them into the room as the change manager. I'm here to change everything, but they're going to be the least liked person in the room. Call them something different. Don't. That's not a signpost. We're making their job 10 times more difficult just with a label.
I had that was funny in that one. I just digress a little bit, but I employed a change manager at a previous organisation, but the change manager role was actually to put change into production, IT-wise, and the business went, how come you can afford a change manager and we can't? It's like, oh, hold on, do you understand? So they'd taken it as a business change one, and when it was actually just a technology change.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to jump to the lightning round, if that's all right.
That's fine.
So I'm going to put some cards out. Stepped away from the microphone and so I'm going to put these out for you here. Spread them out roughly. I can tell I'm not a croupier. Pick three. And I'm going to ask you just to read the question and give us your instant answer.
Right. This could go very well or very badly. Right. Pick one.
Do it. Yeah, do it.
What's the one thing about your career that you didn't expect? So far, or... I facetiously go that I haven't got fired. What I haven't. One of the things that's a really good thing in reflecting on it is how many people over my stage of my career have explained how much they've enjoyed working together. And I was saying to you before, this is just come back from doing some time in Europe. Holiday, and caught up with old work colleagues in London, and we were just talking about all the times, and it was the chance that just people coming. I was just there had one day, and people turned up. That to me is surprising, great. And having those relationships.
Yeah, nice.
So, right, number 2. Pick 2, my lord. Pick 2. What's next on your career bucket list? Really, that's a good question. Coming back to a bit before, working for a good, healthy organisation, I'm doing a couple of things at the moment around advisory with a data IT organisation around your AI and data needs. And then also doing a implementation or CTO role for a health company a couple of days a week. But my next thing I'd love to be able to do, get back into overseas international piece again.
Yeah.
And I do miss that a little bit. But yeah, I think I just want to make a difference until I'm not doing it. And then also part of that difference is getting into more advisory, getting into more boards.
Yeah.
I enjoy that and being able to pass on whatever my wisdom is worth and experience is worth to people.
Yeah, great.
So, all right. Last one. What are the first 3 things you check when you start your day? Start my day when I get up. Funny enough, check the news. Make sure the coffee machine's on.
Yeah.
And what I've got into a real habit of doing is making sure that I don't grab the phone and just grab the phone and check it work emails. I've actually got away from having work emails on my phone.
Yeah.
Check messages if I need to, but really actually having breakfast with the wife.
Yeah, nice.
Right?
Okay,
So
start with the
making
pro-social
making sure that does. And then is there really anything I need to ring? So it's, we've got a couple of dogs, a couple of cats, make sure they haven't eaten each other. That's always a good thing. But yeah, that's just starting that personal thing. From a work perspective, the first thing to do is just wherever I'm working is just checking in with people to make sure that they're okay. And then get another coffee.
See, that's not the coffee too much, but the checking in with people is really interesting. I've got this idea that we sort of joked earlier about email when it first came into business, and it was a communication tool. But our Outlook, our Outbox, or whatever, inbox, didn't drive our day.
Yes.
We came in and we had our tasks, and we kind of go to that when we need to communicate something or check. But I kind of feel that maybe in the modern world, the inbox drives a lot of action for people's days. And you can tell by the responsiveness. You send an email, someone replies within a few minutes. Is that an expectation? But it's an unhealthy habit.
Yeah, a few years ago, I had a woman that worked out of Canada for me. She would look after my security awareness globally. And obviously different time zones. And I remember I set up a team offsite, got everyone together, and she expressed this real concern and stress around the fact that she was getting emails during her middle of the night and she wasn't responding to them straight away. So she was actually getting up at ungodly hours to make sure that she responded to the emails. Yeah. And we all said to her, but why? We're not expecting a response.
That's right. So
getting people to understand, there's timely responses, but you don't have to really just go bang, respond at any other time. And we made it a real pact of expectation within the leadership team and everything that you don't have to respond to those sort of things straight away.
Yeah.
Right. I do have a bit where everyone's got to be contactable, so mobile or messaging or whatever, so you can just have that interaction. The other thing too is you highlighted around COVID, the role I'm doing, the interim role I'm doing at the moment is 3 days a week. It's the first time I've been working in the office since COVID.
Right.
On a regular basis.
Yeah.
And I had to change my work practices. When COVID first happened, my development group gave feedback that their engagement score went up because they haven't got people bugging them all the time. But that pitted out, I think, over time. So then my day would be work day. I couldn't walk up to people and go, well, let's go for a quick coffee and chat and work out what's going on. I'd have to do the ring around and we have a bit of a stand up, but I'd do the ring around and say, well, how are you going with this? What's going on? And that sort of stuff, and just have a bit of a chat around what's going on.
It's funny, isn't it? I tend to work from home on a Monday and Friday.
Yeah.
And sometimes if someone's been off for a week, I may give them a call and say, hey, how was your week off? How are you going? And this, that. And I always have to say, I haven't called you for any reason other than just to check in.
Yeah.
just so they're not kind of thinking, oh, is there a second intention?
Yeah.
But if I'm in the office and someone's in the kitchen and I kind of wander in and I start making a cup of tea or whatever, and how you going? How's your partner? How are your kids? Whatever. I don't have to say, I'm just checking.
That's right. You don't have to say any of that, because it's sort of we talk about good experience, bad experience, but a bad experience for me was in one role I had where every time I get a phone call from I had a couple of bosses I responded to work for, it was always a bollocking.
Right.
Always.
Yeah.
Like I quite heavy, and I reflect on it, it was just bad. So it was pretty much downright bullying. And so I then had this allergic reaction every time my phone rang. I remember the next job I went into, and I wouldn't answer my phone. I just let it go for voicemail, and then I'd build up the courage to ring back, so to speak. And it took a long time. And even now is that sometimes when the bosses ring, I just go, oh, hold on. This is a lot of years later, and just got to shift that mindset. So you've got to be really cognizant of how those sort of interactions get taken from the other side.
Yes, that's right, because it can be quite...
So your thing about I'm just checking in is great, and those sort of things, and that's where I like the messaging bit's really good, because you can go, oh, do you mind I give you a ring? Are you busy? So you're respecting their time, and then they're sort of warmed up to the fact that the boss is going to give them a ring.
Yeah, that's right. We actually, during COVID and we were full lockdown, we did a thing in the business. We called it Kitchen Club.
Okay.
It's like a sort of play on Fight Club, the Kitchen Club. But the idea was we paired people up, and it was kind of reenact as if you bumped into each other in the kitchen, and just call each other on Teams, and just talk about the kind of stuff you'd talk about if you bumped into each other. Yeah. And it's the rules of Kitchen Club is what says in the kitchen stays in the kitchen. So you can't, it's not, someone said to you they're stressed about this, that, the other. It's not your news to go and broadcast that to other people. It's about trust. Fantastic. But just to try and create some connection. And it's interesting now we're kind of back to being probably 60% in person. Our people and culture person actually drives this kind of coffee connection, not every month, but every maybe third month or so, and she'll just pair you off, and she'll give you a couple of topics, and to go and have a coffee with that person, and the feedback is excellent, because I think she must design it so that people that don't normally come into contact with each other through their day-to-day are forced into a situation where they
that's
go.
Awesome.
But it's that I've got this obsession at the moment, and I heard it somewhere a few months ago that no team, no organisation, no human drifted towards excellence or drifted towards high performance. You have to mindfully pick what you're going for and make it happen. And that's something that we're trying to do more increasingly with our business at the moment. Is we don't want to drift. We want to. We're only going to drift to badness. So how do we kind of mindfully point ourselves in the right direction and do something about it?
And the beauty of the team is that if they feel like you're drifting, they can sort of kick the others into drive, and
that's right. Go. Look, I've got the last couple of questions for you actually. What are you most proud of in your career?
Collectively over my career, done a lot of change, a lot of security program changes, a lot of technology delivery changes, all that sort of stuff. But my constant is always that people element. So people have always reached out and said, enjoyed working for you at this time, or catching up and all that sort of stuff. And that's been quite rewarding. That's what I'm most proud of. And what the link with that is that I can say that people who've worked for me have gone on and done some pretty impressive things. And I was part of that journey. So
fantastic. What's been the most significant feedback you've had in your career?
Positive or negative?
As you wish. I guess I think significant is the thing that's probably changed you the most, or shone a light on something that's made a difference.
I think it comes back to I've had some good people that have given me advice and all that sort of stuff around. I don't think it's particular advice. Things that spring to mind quickly is very I like to work on multiple things. So advice was, make sure you focus on doing one or two things well. Okay, so I've got the principle of threes. Make sure that you're making sure that you're delivering on three. But it's like I was saying before, like the growth I've experienced through Larry and Simon and working with Simon was all around holistically, how can you do things and how can you do more?
Yeah.
And them backing me to be able to do that. So that probably the advice was around, have a go, have a crack.
Yeah. What's the worst that can happen?
That's right. And as long as no one dies, then it's all good.
Yeah. It's something, there's a guy, Dr. Steve Peters, you've come across him.
No,
he did the book The Chimp Paradox, about the kind of chimp brain. He's actually behind the British cycling team, a lot of their success from a psychological perspective. But the first thing he works on with athletes is that it's just a game of tiddlywinks, as in, it doesn't really matter, win or lose.
Yeah, okay.
In the moment, you're going to feel emotion, but
you're
going to go home tomorrow. It's just a game of tiddlywinks. And the minute you can come to terms with that, and I think that relates into business as well.
It does. And I think if I look at the high stress times I've ever done, I've probably taken things too personal, or you're mainly more the personal thing, and the stress builds up and your mental health diminishes. I'm not saying you don't care, but you've really got to be able to go, right, okay, well, how do I use my skills, how do I use my tool set to be able to get the thing over the line? And at the end of the day, if you're with a group of like-minded people, coming back before, with great people you work with, everyone's in it together.
Yeah.
And you're pushing in the same direction.
Yeah, absolutely. If you had a singular piece of sage advice for the next generation, what would it be?
Don't rush. I can remember sitting on a Qantas flight, and it's going back a while, Qantas flight in the early 2000s, and you'd listen to the radio because they didn't have the screens and all that sort of stuff, and they'd have the business channel. And I can remember this little segment around how at that stage a lot of the senior leaders, which funnily enough I'm now there, that the person that was saying this, age-wise, is they were going, well, we're passing on, and there's a lot in Australia, there's a lot of new people, young people getting into real senior roles without the experience and that sort of stuff. And everyone, fantastic. And I remember then going to the UK, and I remember having this discussion with the CIO, and he goes, he got promoted into the role. And I said, all the thing, congratulations, that sort of stuff. He goes, I could have done this role earlier, but if I stuffed this up, what am I going to do for the rest of my career? So I pushed it back, and he was older. And he goes, the one thing that you don't need to be in a rush.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a balancing act. There's a lot of really smart people out there, but the more experience and the more things you can learn and fail fast at earlier in your career, the better off you will be later on.
It's funny saying that, making me think of that the kind of notion of the promotion paradox, right? Where people essentially are promoted to the point of incompetence.
Yeah.
And that's that rush. It's that rush, that kind of feel, okay, I've mastered this job, I now need to move to the next level. Whereas I think that breadth of approach and getting different experiences is going to continually build and set you up.
And there's plenty of people who, they might call it imposter syndrome, call it whatever you like, could probably do the next roles, but they're just holding themselves back. So there is a balance, but I think coming back to the question of what's the advice, don't rush.
Yeah, absolutely. Final question is more of a recommendation. Is there anything that you're kind of listening to, reading at the moment, getting inspiration from?
There was I finished it earlier in the year, but I read Henry Winkler's biography, Being Henry, which was actually an interesting read, and his sort of life story and the advice he's been given, and then going on. So if you want to read something that's totally different, have a bit of read of that. It's probably for most the younger generation wouldn't remember the Fonz and Happy Days, but we remember the things that he's done since. And it's an interesting read.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Do you listen to many other podcasts? Or
I listen to the podcast I listen to mainly is like Freakonomics. That's a really good one. This American Life is a really interesting one. And the other one is mostly the people who I mostly admire, and they get people in and talk talk to people just to share their experience, roughly like this.
Yeah.
But they have, Nobel laureates and things like that. So, but
they can only aspire to this.
They can only aspire.
I think before we started, you said to me, "What's a podcast? What's an interview?"
Yeah.
I don't know what this has been, but
it's been very enjoyable.
I was going to say I've thoroughly enjoyed it too. It's been really insightful to learn about your journey, and
thank you.
Really fascinating. I think a lot of people will be interested and take inspiration from your lessons. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you for listening to Tales from Tech Titans, and be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcast. If you'd like to get more insights about tech careers, then check out the Emmbr, that's EMMBR LinkedIn page for the latest updates, articles, and engaging discussions.